8:20 is the time on BBC Radio Wales, and the board of the energy company EDF is expected to decide later whether to proceed with a new nuclear power station at Hinkley Point in Somerset, visible from the South Wales coast, just across the Severn Estuary. It's being billed as the most expensive building in the world. The company's repeatedly put off making a final decision on the project because of concerns about escalating costs. You may remember earlier in the week a report released from the Welsh Affairs Committee at the Commons suggested there's great potential for developing new nuclear projects here in Wales at sites like Wilfannewydd on Anglesey and at Trawsfynydd, but they need to show value for money and benefit people living around them. And earlier this morning, a media Womack, the deputy leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, had this to say.
First of all, this is a short-term solution with a long-term risk. Secondly, I'm very concerned about the fact that in France they're closing down their nuclear facilities, yet EDF, who is a French-owned company, are happy to open up a nuclear facility in the UK. Their finances at the moment have been called precarious by some groups. I also just see that this is us pushing our current dirty systems onto future generations.
So let's speak to Tom Greatrex, the Chief Executive for the Nuclear Industry Association. Good morning.
Good morning.
We heard it there from Amelia Womack. Nuclear power plants carry an inherent risk, however small you may claim it is. There's the issue of what to do with nuclear waste, and they're hugely expensive. Can't we do better than this?
Well, it depends. If we want to have a secure, reliable energy supply and we want to ensure that we meet our climate change target, something I would have thought that the Green Party would be concerned about, then we need to have a secure, reliable mix in our energy mix. And we are, over the next few years, moving to a position where lots of our power stations are closing because they've come to the end of their lives. The demands on electricity, even as we get more efficient with how we use it, even with storage technology, are likely to increase as transport becomes more electrified, more electric cars, more electrification of railways, like the line into the Great Western Line into Wales. And then more electric heating. All of those things mean demand for electricity will increase. The distinction between electricity and energy will decrease, but demand for electricity will increase. And so therefore we need to have that balanced mix. And what nuclear provides you is with low carbon, reliable, on all the time power, which you can't get from currently available renewables. And also it's a much more dense form of energy. So on a relatively small site, you can produce a lot more than if you were going to try to do that with wind turbines or solar panels.
But you know, I mean, technology is improving as regards, big batteries, storing energy when it comes to renewables. And you'll have seen a report published earlier this year by a think tank, the Intergenerational Foundation, that they've worked out that this thing Hinkley is so expensive that you could produce the same amount of electricity over the course of the next 35 years for £40 billion less by using renewables.
Yeah, well, that report was frankly nonsense on stilts because it didn't take into account intermittency in renewables, didn't take into account the huge journey that needs to go for storage technology to be available at grid level. It's significant issues with storage and battery storage because it's not low carbon and it degrades very quickly over time. So there's a lot of technological development that needs to happen to get to that point. And what we have, and we have had it in Wales up until last year when Wilfa closed, 41 years of producing significant amounts of power in a very reliable basis, and also has a significant economic benefit to the local area as well. And that's what the Welsh Affairs Committee report you referred to made clear earlier on this week about the potential there, and potentially for a small modular reactor at Trawsfynydd as well in the future.
Any concerns about who's behind this, though? EDF have, two projects of note in Finland and in France where they are over budget and over schedule.
Well, no, they don't, because Finland is not an EDF project. And in France, in Flamanville, that is an EDF project, and that will be generating power in 2018, or likely to be end 2018. But that power station, they've got to have learnt lots of lessons from the development of that power station, which and issues which won't be repeated at Hinkley. For example, they started construction at Flamanville and then changed the design part the way through, and that has led to a lot of issues around delay. They didn't have the level of engagement they probably needed to have in terms of planning with procurement and suppliers ahead of starting to build. All of those things have been done in advance with Hinkley. That means that those lessons will have been learned. And remember that the consumer is not paying anything for this until it's producing power. So the risk and all the issues associated with the time it takes to build it and the cost it takes to build it are taken by EDF, by the developer. It's the same model that will work for Wolver in the future. That means the consumer is only paying when the electricity is generated and not beforehand.
I think a lot of people listening will just be uncomfortable about nuclear power. And we go back to the first 2 points that I made alongside the cost of it, which is the safety, and they'll have seen Fukushima, and I know that you'll say that the chances are infinitesimally small and that these reactors are safer. But I think waste concerns many, many people. Nuclear waste remains a problem, doesn't it?
Well, we have had nuclear power for 60-odd years in the UK, and we have had a very good safety record during the whole of that time, an exemplary safety record in the UK.
It's a very short space of time, 60 years. I mean, 60 is not a long time, is it?
Well, it is. It's the entirety of the time that it's been operating in the UK, and there has, storage of waste. And remember that the amounts of waste are very, very small, and there are different categories of waste. So there's low-level waste, the same as you get from hospitals and lots of medical procedure, huge radiation. And you're as radioactive as I am, and if you're in Cornwall, you're more radioactive than you are if you're sitting in London. But there's you've got to take into account the levels of radioactivity, but there are long-term solutions for how you deal with a small amount of high-level waste. We've seen that in Scandinavia, in Sweden, and in Finland, the development of
what do we do with it?
Waste disposal. So,
what will happen to the waste from Hinkley?
So, well, firstly, there is very little waste from Hinkley compared to older power stations because of the way it's been designed, and that
But where does it go?
The high-level waste is firstly, you're going to be talking about years before that waste becomes apparent, and there will be there's a development of what's called a geological disposal facility, which is similar to what's being developed in Finland.
What does that mean? It's buried.
Which is a large underground storage of that long-term waste, and for it to be contained in a way that means that it's got that integrity for thousands of years into the future.
Where?
Well, in the UK, that hasn't yet been decided. There is a process underway about where that will be sited.
I can't imagine anybody wants that in their neighbourhood.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I'd encourage you, if you get a moment, to take a look at what happened both in Sweden and in Finland, where there were a number of potential sites where actually communities were competing with each other to secure the site.
Really? Why would they do that?
Because it provides, there are jobs involved in economic activity around those areas, and that's something which is valid. And you'll know from in Anglesey as well as in Somerset as well as in Cumbria that the communities that are around nuclear power stations, nuclear sites, they know that actually a lot of the fears which people have are not borne out in reality. They live with
part of those communities do, and there'll be a large movement against another power station at Wilver B. So it splits communities. I was just interested to know why anybody would want nuclear waste to be buried anywhere near them.
Well, look, nuclear power provides that baseload power. It provides it without carbon emissions. It's part of an answer to a suppressing problem we've got in terms of climate change. It's not the whole answer. It's about a combination, how you best get a mix of nuclear, of renewables, of using emerging technologies in storage and demand management in a world where we're going to need significant electricity into the future. It's not a simple problem. It's not a short-term issue that we're just only starting to deal with. This is something that has been on the agenda for a period of time, but we are running out because a lot of power stations are coming towards the end of their lives. And there's very few of us that are able to live without electricity.
We've got to move on. I'm going to Google away and find out about this contest to house the nuclear waste in Scandinavia. Thank you very much. Tom Greatrex, the Chief Executive of the Nuclear